So yeah, I'm dying to hear like how your last couple weeks has been, like off in
For
your
sure. I mean,
icy.
definitely like my Rumble strips have been telling me, which is kind of a funny insight I got lately that I know that I've shared this with you, I think last time, but I've just been feeling like I need to treat myself more like an old lady or like an old person, and how we give respect to old people, but we also acknowledge like that their bodies aren't in the same condition that they used to be, and like things are get a little harder in life, and we offer a little extra help, maybe a little extra understanding or compassion, and also a lot of extra care. Like I think of my great grandma who lived to be 103 and who was literally presented with a milkshake for lunch every day because like that's what she liked to eat. And like that's just so lovely. Like if you want to have a milkshake, then go for it. But you know, like the kind of care that we give old people, like we don't really give that kind of care to ourselves. And I've just been thinking like, you know, I care for my inner child, but what about like treating myself more like an old lady and giving myself a little more respect with that care? And I think maybe I moved a little too far past that rumble strip, and then now my body is like, please care for me. Please let me rest in the middle of the day like an old person would do. Like just fall asleep in front of the TV. It's okay. You know.
Like give into that. Give
Yes.
into honoring that this is what my body's asking for. You know, like what sounds best to me right now is a milkshake for lunch. Like, you know, and it's you're so right. Like we do so much more often identify with our inner child, but like what about our inner old person? Like in terms of time is kind of irrelevant, and everything we've ever been, everything we'll ever be is kind of all existing in the now. Like we identify maybe more with our inner child because we have memories of being a child, and we don't really know yet, like
Right.
unless you're that age, like you don't know what it's like to be an old person, so you don't really factor it in, but you're that now too. So yeah, I love that. It feels more respectful than like treating yourself like a child. It
Right.
like encompasses the wisdom of life, but still the ease of, like, I love that you said like she was presented with, not just she had, like somebody went and got it and brought it to her. Like that's the
Yeah.
level of care.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's, oh, you deserve that. We all deserve that.
We all deserve that, not only when we're old. And if you
Yeah,
like
all the time.
identify more as like an old soul, you know, like I think that the age of your soul, I mean, our souls are probably all a lot older than we would think, you know, it's very unlikely that anyone is living. I mean, I'm sure that there are people, but it's unlikely that you'd be living your very first life right now. Oh. And but hello, he's a little bit freaked out. The snow keeps falling off, like kind of the roof part,
Uh-huh.
and he's a little freaked out by that. Um,
Sure.
but technically, we've all lived lives, we've all been old before. And it is a feeling that you may not consciously remember, but you can get in touch with. And something that like I've been saying, I guess, you know, like I've been saying this out loud and therefore probably manifesting it. I acknowledge this, but since I was like 16 years old, I've been saying that I feel like I'm like 85. Like what is this? Like, why does my body hurt? Why do I feel old? Why do I have all these like feelings of something that like a 16-year-old should not be feeling? And it's like, you might be 16 or whatever, however old you are right now in this life, but it's not like you've never been older than that before. So that's like an interesting way to kind of give yourself some validation. Like for me, you know, feeling that way since I was so young, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I've lived a lot of lives. I've been here a lot, and it feels like I've done this shit. My body feels a little worn down, and maybe I'm in one of my later stage lives where, like, I'm not going to say I'm never going to come back here again because Earth is a pretty cool place, but you know, maybe we've all done this. We've been around the block a few times, so we're a little tired, and that's okay.
That makes so much sense. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I resonate with that as far as like just low physical energy in general. And
Yeah.
early on, like in high school, when it first started, I had mono when I was like 14, 15 years old. And they say like once you have mono, like you're never the same. And so I couldn't ever really tell, like, did I pick up that conditioning and it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy, or was it actually true? Because there was definitely a difference afterwards. Like my physical energy never really came back. And it really is like I'm basically on bed rest, like an old person most of the time, like a really old one that like all they got left is just to sit and be. Like that's a lot of what I get up to in my daily life. And I'm, almost.
And you would not give an old person a hard time about it. You'd say,
No.
Don't overdo it. Just rest.
Yeah.
Don't overdo it. Don't hurt yourself. Although I do admit, like in my traveling, like I did back when I was in college, I did a study abroad in Italy, and the older people there are so self-sufficient and they're so capable. And like, if you offer them a seat on the bus, they're not going to take it. They're going to just look at you like, you sit down. Like, I don't need a seat. You sit down on the seat. Like, and so there's kind of a difference in culture there, but that's also maybe something important to remember, that being old is also not equated with being incapable of doing things for yourself. It's more that like you acknowledge the wisdom that you have in the life that you've lived and kind of where you're at. And you just allow yourself to be as self-sufficient as you naturally are at that phase, which sometimes culture is determining of that to an extent, like in other places. So,
well, and that's like, it made me kind of think like us as old people, you know, us 50 years from now is probably not going to be the same as old people right now today, because they were born and raised like in the 50s and 60s. And that's like their culture that they're aging, you know, through time. And like we were born when we were born, and then we're going to age that culture. Like, yeah, it's just, what does it even mean to be old? Because then you got things online like 100-year-old yoga teachers and shit like that. That's like, age is really not as much of a thing as we think it is. Like, there's so much more at play. And I like how you brought the past lives into it. And like, maybe you've done a lot of work in those past lives, and this lifetime that you're in is legit just so you can rest, like just so your soul can rest. And you've done the challenging lessons, and now you're here to learn the lessons of like simplicity and simply letting well-being be a thing, like letting yourself rest when you're tired. Like, how easy is that? Except there's so many reasons why we tell ourselves like, no.
Yeah,
no.
That's limitations being like, I'm too young for that. Like, I'm not in that stage of my life. It's like, well, age really is like, it's something we use to limit ourselves mostly. I mean, it's partially like we can keep track of, I don't know, maybe it's like organizational, but it's also kind of a limitation that we put on ourselves. And kind of partially how I've gotten to this place of thinking about things this way is I discovered, his name is Ainsley MacLeod. But I discovered his work, and a lot of his work is around like soul age, basically, which I don't like fully identify with, you know, like seeing souls as having like a linear, like level 1, 2, 3 kind of age. But I do get the like gist of what he's saying of like, you know, like if you identify as one of those higher levels of like soul age, basically, having been here a lot, done a lot of work, you're in kind of one of the higher phases of evolution as a human. If we were like beyond all the human evolution, we would not be here. So, you know, it's easy to be like, oh, well, I'm above that. Like, I get all this stuff. I did the work. I've done the work. It's like, you wouldn't be here if there weren't work to do. So, you know, a little bit of like humbling there, but, and I will put his name in the description, but for his work.
Yeah, did you like buy a book of his, or is there like a podcast, or what?
He has a free online quiz to like determine your soul types or something like that. And then mostly I've just seen his Instagram, like I've seen his social media, and he posts cool stuff about like certain of his ideas of different soul levels, and he'll put like some like describing factors of like soul level 3, like, do you identify with these points? And I know he has a book, so I feel like at some point I'm going to buy and read his book, but I haven't like reached that point yet. But yeah, it just really helped me to see that like, if you're at one of those higher levels of soul evolution, you might be living, it's almost like take your normal lifespan, baby to old person, birth to death, but spread that, like kind of take a step back and spread that over all the lives you've lived here on earth. And if you're in one of those later phases, you're kind of in your old person life, you know, where like your whole life kind of gets to be, give yourself a little more credit, give yourself a little more rest. You've been here a lot. You're probably a little bit exhausted, even if you don't really fully understand why, because now we're looking at this on a bigger scale instead of just your one conscious life. So it's like, it takes a lot of, I don't know, just understanding and being able to, again, surrender to like let go of, I don't need to have all the details as to why I'm so tired and exhausted, but I can trust that like I've been doing work here on earth for a while now and I'm like a little tired and that's okay. That's okay. I'm still here, so I still have work to do, but at my own pace. And that's fine.
I think that's what, as we get older, and this is, I mean, even in your 20s to your 30s to your, like, you get better and better and better and better at going with your own pace. And that's like older people are really good at that. At like they walk at their own pace. They do what, like, you know, organize their lives so that it makes sense for them. And that's all we ever have to do. And so, yeah, like learning to do that early on, or just naturally being inclined towards that early on. Like, I really like that.